Part 8. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 71. Chapter 71. As expected, women are inexplicable creatures. Oh, Lucien gave up his intention of returning it to her and drank it with peace of mind. Lu Ning's eyes fell on the straw that the two of them had used together, and the roots behind her ears felt inexplicably hot. He quietly raised his fingers and pinched it. Fortunately, the bus came at this moment. She immediately dropped the other person and ran towards the direction where the car was parked. "What are you running for? It's only a few steps away, and you're afraid it won't be able to drive away," Lucien's voice came from behind, and the guy followed slowly behind him with long legs. Morning is the peak time for students and office workers to take the bus. The bus was so crowded that Lu Ning managed to squeeze in. "If there are no seats, you will have to stand." The seats on both sides were full of people. Lu Ning was squeezed in the middle of the aisle. In order to avoid being knocked down later, she could only grab the armrest above her head, but the nearest empty one was about as far away as she could stretch her arms. There was still a punch's distance, and she was just about to squeeze forward when the car started suddenly. Due to the inertia, she fell to the side along with the crowd. "Careful dash." Fortunately, Lucien, who got into the car behind her, helped her in time, then pulled her to him, asked her to hold her waist and stand up, and said, "You are short and you still don't admit it." Lu Ning subconsciously wanted to refute, but she caught a glimpse of his long arms grasping the handrail above his head easily. Lu Ning. Just so angry. This season, everyone wears less and less clothes. Lucien only wore a short-sleeved t-shirt under his school uniform jacket. Because he was in a hurry to go out in the morning, the zipper of his school uniform was not zipped and was completely open. As he raised his arms, the hem of the school uniform also rose, revealing the pure cotton t-shirt underneath. Lu Ning's beautiful cold white fingers happened to fall on the t-shirt. Through the thin layer of fabric, you can feel his thin waist. And the temperature belonging to the other party transmitted through the fabric. Lu Ning inexplicably felt that the palms of her hands were a little hot, and couldn't help but want to retract them. As soon as her fingers were removed from his waist, the other party grabbed his wrists, pressed them on his waist forcefully, and said, "Hold on, I still want to, can't fall down." As if to confirm what the other person said, the car suddenly stopped suddenly. Lu Ning was hit by the person behind her, and she threw herself into Lucien's arms, hitting her face straight into the other person's chest. The sound of a car full of people complaining suddenly sounded in my ears. Before she could withdraw from his arms, she heard a familiar yet unbeatable voice from above her head, "What did I say?" Lu Ning. Suddenly I don't want to talk to the other person. After finally getting out of the car, Lu Ning breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly I feel sick. Wouldn't it be better to live in the Song family with someone to cook for me and a dedicated driver to pick me up? I have to go back and squeeze into the bus with someone every day. It is simply asking for trouble. "What's wrong with you?" Lucien couldn't help asking when he saw that the girl was in a bad mood and depressed. "It's none of your business," Lu Ning glared at the other party angrily. Lucien was stared at in confusion. Why is this girl angry again? It seems like he didn't offend her, right? It was obviously fine when I went out in the morning. Sure enough, women are inexplicable creatures. Lucien touched his nose and was about to say something else, but Lu Ning was already walking towards the school gate. Just on the other side, Song Tingzi also got out of the car. The two looked at each other. Then, he saw the girl taking the initiative to walk towards him. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 72. Chapter 72. Men are sometimes fickle. Although I already know the relationship between the two, for some reason, I don't want to see the two of them get too close. This girl's brother is enough for her. As for the other stepbrother who appeared halfway, I don't like it no matter how I look at it. But no matter how unpleasant it is, you can't step forward to separate the two people, you can only hold it in yourself. Watching the two people talking as they turned to the second floor, Lucien felt his teeth hurt inexplicably. He couldn't help but licked his back molars, clicked his tongue, and then continued walking towards the third floor. As soon as I stepped into the classroom, I heard a statement from the front row saying in a loud voice while doing homework, "I find that the most shameless thing is homework." I told him that I don't like him, but he still insists on pestering me to make him do it. Even Chunan couldn't stand this guy's arrogant remarks, so he swore, Lao Chen, can you please stop driving anytime and anywhere? You will spoil the children. Child, who are you talking about? Chun Nan, everyone here except you. Just when Shan Shen was about to speak, he caught sight of Lucien entering the door. He immediately turned his head, put his hands on the other party's table and said, "Third brother, did you cook with Sister Ning yesterday? Do you have any objections?" Lucien threw his skullbag on the table, pulled out a stool and sat down. The noise was a bit loud, and the stool legs rubbed against the ground, making a harsh sound, causing others to look over unconsciously. Yisha felt that the third brother's expression was a bit scary for some reason, as if he was a little angry, so he immediately sneered and said, "I don't dare. I'm just curious, which one of you cooked the food last night?" Lucien looked over with a cold look, "Can't we do it together?" Stated in inexplicable excitement, "Yes, of course, not to mention cooking together, even if we cook something else together, he has no part in commenting." But she stared at the other person. "Are you so angry so early in the morning? Is it possible that the dish last night was not delicious? It doesn't look like it. As far as the third brother's taste yesterday, it didn't look like it was not delicious." Lucien glanced at him and then looked away. He stopped paying attention to him and took out his mobile phone. Seeing that he was holding the phone without making any sound for a long time, Shan Yu couldn't help but take a closer look. "Huh?" He stared at Lucien's mobile phone interface and suddenly made a sound of surprise, widened his eyes and said with a ghostly expression, "No, third brother, when did you start playing support? Didn't you say you can't be a support in this life?" "Did I say that?" Lucien raised his head. She nodded with absolute certainty, "You must have said that. If you don't believe me, just ask the Virgin." Chunan on the side also nodded. Lucien, "Oh, maybe men are fickle sometimes." Statement vs Chunan? What the hell? Statement, "I just want to know who has such a big face that can actually make you, third brother, willing to be her assistant? I guess she must be a beautiful woman." Lucien said nothing. Shunan and Chunan couldn't help but look at each other. The third brother actually didn't deny it. Does that mean he guessed it? "No, who is it? Do we know each other?" Shen Cheng felt as if his heart was being scratched by a cat. He was so curious. Lucien gave him a sideways glance and said, "You talk too much nonsense." Statement. Aren't I curious? There was someone who could make third brother change his principles. He couldn't wait to get to know him. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is sweet and wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 73. Chapter 73. It hurts, be gentle. Okay, don't ask. Chunan put his hand on his shoulder. You can't wink as a human being. Before I saw the third brother, he was already impatient. No, aren't you curious at all? She turned to look at him. Chun Nan, I'm not curious, because I already guessed who it is. Who? Chunan glanced in Lucien's direction and said, as you said, the other party can actually make third brother change his principles. After knowing him for so many years, there is only one person who has that ability. You mean Sister Ning? She almost immediately thought of Lu Ning. If third brother is special to anyone, it's just that girl. When he thought of this, Shangzi immediately took out his mobile phone and sent a message to the other party. Sister Ning, Sister Ning. After a moment, he raised his head after receiving Lu Ning's reply, you really guessed it. It's really Sister Ning. Chun Nan pulled his lips slightly and looked in the direction of Lu Xian with an onto smile. There's no need to guess, it's just a matter of lice on a bald man's head. After school in the evening, Uncle Li brought soup to Lu Ning. Yesterday it was lotus root, yam, and pork ribs soup, today it is walnut stewed pigeon, both are refreshing. Lu Ning returned the thermos bottle that he had cleaned the night before and thanked him again. After the people left, Lu Xian couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and said, your stepfather is quite good at being a man. Although the soup was made by the nanny at home, it was obvious that he got the hint from the owner. Based on his understanding of Aunt Tang, he would not think of this at ordinary times, and the only one would be her stepfather. Of course, it's good to have more people caring about her. It's just that every time I see this girl and the boy named Song together, I feel a little unhappy for no reason. Lu Ning rolled her eyes at the other person, can you speak? Lu Xian put his hands in his pockets and said lazily, is there something wrong with what I said? Lu Ning was too lazy to argue with him, aren't you going to see your grandma? Why don't you leave? The two immediately took a taxi to the hospital. Before getting in the car, Lu Xian had already asked Lu Yu which hospital Grandma Ji was in and the location of the ward. Inpatient department. Ji Shu looked at Lu Ning and Lu Xian who were walking in from the door of the ward and said, why are you here? Grandma Ji lives in a single ward. Lu Yu had already left because of something at work, so Ji Shu was the only one in the ward. Is Grandma okay? Lu Xian looked at the old man on the hospital bed. The old man is wearing various testing instruments and is already asleep. Ji Shu was afraid of waking up the other party, so he motioned for the two of them to go outside to talk. After closing the door of the ward, Ji Shu said, your grandma's condition has basically stabilized, but she will be hospitalized for observation for a while. I told you, you kids can just concentrate on your studies, adults. Don't worry about anything. Lu Xian, isn't it enough that I care about my grandma? Okay, I know you are filial. Ji Shu glared at the other party, then smiled at Lu Ning, when grandma wakes up, I will tell her that you have visited her. You two can't help here. It's better to go back quickly. Ji Shu is quite pleased that the two children can think of the old man. However, there is no use for them to stay here, not to mention, the high school homework is so intense, it is better to let them go back to rest early. We just came to see if grandma is okay. Lu Xian had long been accustomed to his mother's favoritism, so he called Lu Ning and said, since we are no longer needed for this, let's go. However, Lu Ning stood still. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 74. Chapter 74. How about severing the relationship between mother and son altogether? Lu Ning stood still, but handed the thermos pot to Ji Shu and said, Aunt Ji, you must not have eaten well, right? There is squab soup in it. You can drink it while it's hot. Grandma's illness, it will take a few days to recover. You have to take care of yourself first before you can have the energy to take care of grandma. You're so thoughtful, kid. The ward is inseparable from people. She really didn't eat well that day. Even the brats in her family didn't think of it, but this girl did. The more Ji Shu looked at this girl, the more satisfied she became. She just hated why she didn't give birth to her. A girl is still considerate, not like a brat. She never thinks of me. In her heart as he said this, he did not forget to glare in Lu Xian's direction. One glance. Lu Xian said unhappily, Praise her if you praise her. Why did you bring me with you? Did I say something wrong? If you were half as sensible and considerate as Ning Ning, I would be able to wake up laughing even in my sleep. Then he looked at Lu Ning, and the expression on his face changed from a volcano to a smile in a second. You guys take the soup home and drink it yourself. Your Uncle Lu will bring food to Aunt G later. Aunt G will stay here for the next few days. The hospital takes care of An's grandmother and doesn't have time to cook for you, so you two have to figure it out on your own. It's okay, Aunt G, we are not children anymore, we can take care of ourselves, Lu Ning said. Okay, then help Aunt G keep an eye on that kid and don't let him cause trouble for me these days. Ji Shu patted her hand, and then looked at Lu Xian warningly. Lu Xian twitched his lips and said, Mom, after all, I have been a mother and son for more than 10 years, can you trust me more? In your eyes, is your son such an unreliable person? Ji Shu looked at him and sneered coldly, and said rudely, Ah, you have no trust in me. Lu Xian, come on, there's nothing we can do between mother and son. Maybe we should just sever the relationship. Hearing this, Ji Shu stepped forward and grabbed his ear and said, Little bastard, I have managed to raise you so big, but you actually want to sever the relationship between mother and son, and have I raised you in vain for so many years? It hurts, please be gentle. Lu Xian's handsome face wrinkled up and he breathed in, Don't you always dislike me? Why don't you just cut off the relationship between mother and child? You don't have to worry about me in the future and just let this girl give to you. How wonderful it is to be a daughter. Ji Shu snorted coldly, let go of him and said, No matter how much I despise you, I have raised you for so many years. I can't raise you in vain. I have to wait for you to pay back the money I spent raising you for so many years. Lu Xian rubbed his ears and continued to pluck the tiger's hair and said, That's not certain. If we don't break off the relationship, you will still have to buy me a house and marry me. After all, wouldn't you suffer even more? As soon as she finished speaking, her mother slapped her on the shoulder, Go away, buying a house and marrying a wife is your own business. I don't care about it. If you can't handle it yourself, just don't get married at all, so as not to blame other girls. Lu Xian twitched the corner of his mouth and continued to argue with the other party, Is there a biological mother like you? Am I your biological child, and I actually hope that my son will be a bachelor? Ji Shu, no, I picked you up from the trash can. I thought you were a dog, but you didn't realize it was a human until you brought it back. If I had known earlier, I might as well have picked up a dog. Come on, we can't talk today. If we continue to talk, his status will be worse than that of a wild dog outside. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 75. Chapter 75 is quite difficult to explain in one sentence. Lu Ning was laughing hard at the side. She really liked the relaxed and cheerful atmosphere of the Lu family. Even when Lu Xian and Aunt Ji bickered, she felt envious. This is one of the reasons why she would rather move back alone than stay in the Song family. Although Ms. Tang Li was very kind to her, the other person was too busy and didn't have much time to spend with her at home. The number of times the two of them spoke in a day was limited, and she couldn't bear to make the other person angry. The Lu family next door is not like this. Although you can always hear Aunt Ji scolding Lu Xian, and you can often hear Lu Xian arguing with each other, the whole family is full of life. This is the feeling of home. After coming out of the hospital, Lu Xian couldn't help but said, Do you think I really was picked up by my mother from the trash can? Lu Ning glanced at her sideways and said, Aunt Ji is very kind to you. Don't make her angry all the time. How dare I? Lu Xian curled his lips, You know, she always said that I picked it up from the trash can when she was a child. The key is that she took me to see the trash can. You tell me, this is something a mother can do. Lu Ning couldn't help but laughed out loud. Look, you think it's outrageous too. Lucien looked tired. Then he complained to Lu Ning, my mother likes you so much, I think you should just be their daughter. It will save them from always looking down on me and thinking that I am not as good as you. Okay, Lu Ning actually nodded and said, what do you think, I accept them as my godfather and godmother. Are you serious? Lucien couldn't help but stop. He was just talking casually, this girl wouldn't take it seriously, would she? Lu Ning said with a serious expression, I like Aunt Ji and Uncle Lu very much, and I think they should also like me very much. If I have a godfather and godmother, they will have more people to pay filial piety to them in the future, and I can have 2 more people. It's nice for you to love me personally, isn't it? That seems to be correct. Speaking of which, he can legitimately ask this girl to call him brother in the future. It's really good. But his mother has been in the hospital during this period. Even if this girl wants to recognize her, she has to wait until his grandmother is discharged from the hospital. Back home, Lu Yu had already finished get off work and was cooking in the kitchen. When he saw them, he greeted them, are you back? The food will be ready in a moment. Just wash your hands and prepare to eat. As soon as Lucien saw his father in the kitchen, his expression instantly became indescribable, it's not Dad, why are you cooking? Lu Yu said with a smile, your mother is not here, so Dad will cook for you tonight. Jishu usually cooks all the food at home, and Lu Yu can only help out by washing dishes and handing over bowls. As for cooking, he usually doesn't handle the cooking. The other party has also cooked before, but the taste is hard to describe. In short, it can be seen from the fact that his mother always cooks the food at home. When he thought about eating his father's cooking at night, Lucien suddenly felt that life was full of gloom and challenges. Lucien tried his best to organize his words and said, well, actually we can order takeout. You have worked so hard at work, and you have to change shifts with my mother in the evening. Let's not cook next time. Lu Yu, takeaway is not healthy and not nutritious, it's better to make it yourself and eat without worry. Lucien. Why does he think takeout is safer? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 76. Chapter 76. Your boyfriend is so kind to you. Lucien's eyes flashed, and then he said to Lu Yu with a serious face, Dad, actually we had already eaten outside when we came back. Lu Ning on the side couldn't help but look at him in confusion after hearing this. When did they eat out? Lucien, however, motioned her not to speak with his eyes. That's it? It's okay. You two just need to eat enough. Then I will take all these dishes to the hospital and eat them with your mother. Lu Yu didn't think much about it after hearing this. He came back to cook on a temporary basis. The 2 children were eating out is also normal. Lucien mourned for his mother in his heart. Although he really wanted to remind the other party not to take it with him, considering that it would hurt his father's self-esteem and enthusiasm, he didn't say anything in the end and just pulled Lu Ning into the room. Why did you lie to Uncle Lu that we had eaten? Lu Ning asked as soon as he entered the room. Shh. Keep your voice down. Lucien hurriedly closed the door, then turned around and said to her, I do it for your own good. My dad's cooking skills are as bad as the tofu dregs fed to pigs. Although he is good at cooking seriously, but it's also natural that it tastes bad. Whether it's good or bad depends on luck, and whether it's salty or not is all luck. One bite you'll never forget. What other people cook is called dark cuisine, but what his dad cooks is black hole cuisine. The kind that even pigs won't eat. Lu Ning. Is it as exaggerated as you said? She seemed okay. Lucien shrugged, if you don't believe it, you can try it. As long as you don't regret it. Then forget it. After hearing what he said, Lu Ning didn't have the courage to try. To be disliked by his own son like this, you can only imagine how bad Uncle Lu's craftsmanship is. But, what should Aunt Ji do? Lu Ning suddenly thought. Uncle Lu said that he would deliver food to Aunt Ji later. Lucian, don't worry, my mother is not stupid. She will naturally stop eating if it doesn't taste good. I'll just ask my dad to buy it when the time comes. Of course, if she is too embarrassed to mention it because she is worried about my dad's face, then it's also a matter between them as husband and wife. Besides, there's still soup left for her, so she won't be hungry. Lu Ning. I always feel that Aunt Ji's son was raised in vain. Even my own mother was fooled. Okay, they are juniors. Uncle Lu worked hard to cook, so even if it doesn't taste good, it's hard to say anything. But Aunt Ji is different. They are husband and wife, so it's okay to give opinions. The two of them waited until Lu Yu went out, then took out their mobile phones and prepared to order takeout. Lu Xian opened the takeout app and then looked at Lu Ning. What do you want to eat? Lu Ning suddenly thought of the video she had seen online 2 days ago of a delivery boy spitting in a takeaway. A trace of hesitation flashed across his face and he asked, "Why don't we just go out to eat?" "That's okay." Lu Xian immediately put away his phone, stood up from his chair and said to Lu Ning, "Let's go." At this time, it is not completely dark yet, and there is a street in front of the community with many restaurants on the street. The two of them randomly picked a rice noodle shop and walked in. The store is not big, and there are only the store owner and a little girl inside. The girl must be the store owner's daughter. She is doing homework in front of the counter, with a 6th grade textbook in her hand. Seeing the two people coming in, he greeted them skillfully, "Brothers and sisters, what do you want to eat?" "Lucian, 2 portions of pork ribs rice noodles, one without coriander or green onions, and a little less rice noodles." "Are both copies the same?" "Just leave my share as usual." Only then did the little girl realize that the previous portion was ordered for the young lady next to him. She couldn't help but smile sweetly at Lu Ning and said, "Miss, your boyfriend is so kind to you." End of this chapter. The school sweetheart soft green plum is sweet and wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 77. Chapter 77 Little brother, can I be your girlfriend? He's not. Lu Ning was stunned and then explained. The little girl blinked at her and whispered, "I know, puppy love is not allowed in school. You must not want to be discovered by others, right? Don't worry, I won't tell anyone." Lucian looked at the quirky little girl in front of him, thinking that she was the same age when he first met Lu Ning, but she looked much smaller than her then. He thought the little girl was quite interesting, so he couldn't help but smile and said, "How do you see that we look like boyfriend and girlfriend? Can't we be brother and sister?" Lu Ning couldn't help but glare at him when he heard this. I wonder if his asking this could easily lead to misunderstanding? The little girl curled her lips and said, "My brother is not that kind to my sister. My brother only knows how to bully me, and he never pays attention to what I like to eat or not. Only my boyfriend can be so considerate." "You know a lot." Lucian couldn't help but laugh. The little girl's eyebrows suddenly rose, and she looked at the two of them with a proud expression. "Of course, I am the smartest person in our class. Everyone says that I am the smartest person in our class. So I guessed it right, right?" The little girl is not only familiar with herself, but also quite narcissistic. "Okay, but this time you guessed wrong," Lucian said, glancing at Lu Ning next to him. "The young lady opposite you is not my girlfriend. She is my sister." "Really? Then you are so kind to your sister," the little girl said with an envious expression. Suddenly something came to mind, and he looked at Lucian with twinkling eyes. "Brother, do you have a girlfriend? If not, can I be your girlfriend?" Lu Ning and Lucian were both stunned. Especially Lu Ning. She knew that this guy was attracted by little girls, but she didn't expect that just when he went out for a meal, a little girl would confess to him. The little girl who is the key person has not even graduated from elementary school. Suddenly the look in Lucien's eyes changed to, "You don't even spare elementary school students, you are such a scumbag." Lucien, he obviously didn't do anything. But after all, I was used to being confessed, so I was just a little surprised. I quickly recovered and said with a smile, "This is not possible, you are too young. Children should study hard." The little girl's expression couldn't help but fall. "Well, when I grow up in a few years, if little brother doesn't have a girlfriend yet, I will be your girlfriend." "Okay," Lucien responded casually. Lu Ning looked at him with even more contempt. There is no doubt that he is a scumbag. Until she came out of the restaurant after finishing her meal, Lu Ning's eyes did not change when she looked at him. "Tisk, why do you keep looking at me like that?" No matter how slow Lucien was, he could still feel the girl's disgust. "Lu Ning, scumbag. No, why am I a scumbag? What did he do? Is this girl giving him such a big label? You actually don't even let primary school students go. What are you if you're not a scumbag?" Lu Ning said with disdain. Lucien couldn't help but laugh. "Can't you tell I was just teasing her?" "Lu Ning, what if the little girl takes it seriously? It's even more disgusting to deceive other people's feelings." "Lucien, don't worry, I will definitely have a girlfriend by then. He is so handsome, does it seem like he will not be able to find a girlfriend?" "Ha," Lu Ning sneered and suddenly didn't want to talk to him. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 78. Chapter 78. Find a wife as early as possible. Since Grandma Anne's condition was stable when we landed, we only need one person to accompany us at night. At about 8 or 9 o'clock, Lu Yu came back from the hospital. Looking pretty normal. Lucien thought of the dishes his father cooked and didn't know what their final fate would be. Of course, he didn't dare to ask. However, without the hostess, the house suddenly seemed a lot more deserted. Father and son were sitting in the living room staring at each other. Lucien wanted to find something to talk about, so he couldn't help but take the initiative and said, "Dad, what do you think about you and my mother accepting the girl next door as your goddaughter? You see, you and my mother both like her very much. When you get older, if you get sick and go to the hospital or something, I can have more people accompany you." Hearing this, Lu Yu glared at him. "You brat, can't you just hope that your mother and I will get along?" "Lucien, isn't this an analogy? Just tell me if it's okay." Lu Yu naturally had no objection. He and Jishu both liked the girl next door. Not only is she beautiful, but she is also well behaved and sensible. She is countless times better than the brat in her family. But compared to being a daughter, he would rather be something else. Glancing at his brat, Lu Yu said, "Are you stupid? If you want to be a goddaughter, it would be better to be your daughter-in-law. There is a saying that wealth should not go to outsiders. A daughter will have to get married sooner or later, but a daughter-in-law can stay with her for the rest of her life." The more Lu Yu thought about it, the more he thought this was a good idea. Lucien was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that his father would dare to think so. "Thinking about how someone mistook that girl for his girlfriend when I went to a restaurant for dinner today. Why does it seem like the whole world thinks they are a couple? Obviously he just regarded that girl as his sister." Lu Yu winked at the brat across from him. "How about it? Do you think what your dad and I said is particularly reasonable?" He wasn't encouraging the brat to fall in love prematurely, he was just giving him some advice. Lucien lazily said, "Dad, are you thinking a little too early? I have just started high school. Why don't I have to wait for a few years to marry a wife after I graduate from college? Besides, I have always treated that girl sisters, please don't mess with me." Looking at the brat, it seems that he hasn't figured it out yet. I don't follow him at all in this regard. Lu Yu, how do you know that you will definitely be able to get into college? What if you fail? Lu Xian. Is this your biological father? Can't you have some confidence in him? Isn't it just taking the college entrance examination? It's not a big deal. Before he could speak, Lu Yu said again, you don't understand. When it comes to finding a wife, you have to do it as early as possible. After all, the little girl is inexperienced and has a simple mind. With your face, you can at least deceive a wife. Wait until after entering the society, everyone knows that when looking for a man, you need to find someone with money and ability. What do you have? Lu Xian. He was indeed found in the trash can. Dad can't say such things. Lu Xian gritted his teeth and said, Dad, don't worry, I will definitely be able to get into college. I'll lie to you, find a daughter-in-law. Okay, he just made a suggestion. Lu Yu stared at him and looked him up and down. Although it is my own pig, the good cabbage with Ning Ning is indeed a bit inferior. It is better to let your mother introduce her to a better one later. Lu Xian. Exhausted. The parents don't want it anymore. I wonder if I can go back to the trash can and pick it up with another couple. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 79. Chapter 79. Why are you not wearing any clothes? Lying on the bed, Lu Xian thought about what his father said before. Inexplicably, I feel that there is a little bit of truth in it. Early the next morning, Lu Xian was woken up by Lu Ning from his sleep. Lu Ning knocked on the door for a long time. When no one opened the door, she entered the password directly. Lu Yu has already gone out, and there is a breakfast bought by the other party on the table. Lu Ning walked to the door of Lu Xian's room in a familiar way and saw that the door was ajar. Uncle Lu must have called him before going out. The room was quiet. Lu Xian. Lu Ning knocked on the door twice symbolically, then opened the door and went in. Sure enough, the guy was still lying on the bed. Wake up quickly. Lu Ning glanced at the alarm clock on the bedside and urged him. Seeing that the guy didn't respond, he directly lifted his quilt and said, hurry up, or you'll be late if you don't get up. I promised Aunt G that I will keep an eye on you these days, and you can't mess with me. Before he could finish his words, Lu Ning suddenly froze while holding the hand that was half lifted by the corner. Someone's naked and graceful upper body was exposed under the quilt. Lu Ning's face turned red for a moment, as if being ignited. She glared at the person and said, why are you not wearing any clothes? Lu Xian yawned, opened his eyes, calmly pulled the quilt back from her hands, sat up and said, isn't it normal to sleep without clothes? Besides, I don't sleep naked. I'm not wearing any clothes. He is wearing his Superman underpants, okay. Then he raised his head again, glanced sideways at her, and raised his eyebrows slightly. I haven't said anything yet. Do you, the one who saw it, have such a big reaction? Besides, I didn't ask for it. You came in and pulled my quilt. The next second, I saw his red lips raised with a seductive curve, and asked with a smile, how is it? Isn't my figure good for you? If others want to see it, they will have to pay for it. Okay, shut up, Lu Ning glared at the other person. He had never seen anyone more shameless than the other person. But in the final analysis, she was at fault for this matter. It was her fault that she was too weak to lift the quilt when she had nothing to do. Lu Ning just wished that time could go back to a minute ago. She would never do anything stupid. No, she would never step through this door. Hurry up, I'll wait for you outside. After saying that, she turned around. Even though she pretended to be calm, Her steps could not help but appear a bit messy, more like running away. I waited until the door was closed before pinching my hot earlobes. It seems that I can no longer enter that guy's room casually. A moment later, Lucien walked out of the room after changing his clothes, yawning and walking towards the bathroom next door. A few more minutes passed by the time I finished washing. Coming out of the bathroom, he sat across from Lu Ning looking refreshed. Eat quickly, go to class. After eating, Lu Ning pushed the soy milk and fried dough sticks on the table in front of him, but his eyes were a little wandering, and he never looked at Lucien once during this period. Are you being shy? Opposite him, Lucien raised the corners of his mouth slightly, looked at her with a playful expression and laughed rudely. I have known this girl for so long, and this is the first time I have seen her like this. Shut up and eat your food. Lu Ning became angry and directly picked up a fried dough stick and stuffed it into the other person's mouth. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 80. Chapter 80. How long do you plan to keep the Cold War with me? Because of what happened in the morning, Lu Ning deliberately stayed away from the guy when they went out to take the bus. After getting off the bus, I also walked inward. Lu Ning walked very fast, wanting to stay as far away from that guy as possible. Lucien followed her at a leisurely pace. Due to the advantage of their long legs, the two of them always kept a close distance. Only when Lu Ning reached the corner of the second floor and was about to enter the classroom, Lucien stretched out his long arm and hooked her schoolbag strap from behind. Hey, sister, are you still angry? Lu Ning turned to glare at him and said, let go. Lucien directly grabbed her belt, turned her around, faced him, and said in his usual casual tone, I don't mind anymore. What are you so awkward about? I promise I won't look at you. Light. Before he finished speaking, Lu Ning rushed towards him and covered his mouth. Those who passed by saw the two men's actions, and their faces showed ambiguous expressions. Lu Ning gritted her teeth and glared at him, and warned in a low voice, from now on, forget about it from your mind. Don't even mention it a word. Lucien pulled her hand away from his mouth and said, okay, I won't mention it, but how long do you plan to keep a Cold War with me? When did I have a Cold War with you? Lucien raised his eyebrows and began to list her crimes in detail. You deliberately stayed far away from me when you were in the car, and you didn't wait for me after you got off the bus. You looked like you wanted to keep your distance from me. Isn't that just treating me coldly, violent? Lu Ning was struck by what she was saying and was speechless for a moment. However, she would not admit it. Who said that? I was just afraid of being late for class. Who made you worry about it for so long? Okay, Lucien didn't argue with her. She said that it would be fine if it wasn't available. Anyway, remember not to avoid me. By the way, we have lunch together. No, Lu Ning subconsciously refused. I eat lunch with Jian Nian. You should eat with Chu Nan and the others. She was afraid that if she remembered what happened in the morning to him, she would not be in the mood to eat. Lucien raised the corner of his mouth and said with a smile, are you sure? Aren't you afraid that I will tell what happened in the morning? As you know, boys will inevitably chat when they sit together to eat. If I don't pay attention to my words, you can't blame me. You. Knowing that the other party is threatening him, there is nothing he can do against the other party. Lu Ning grinned at his teeth and said, I know. Be good. Lucien then let go of his hand holding her school bag, and instead rubbed the top of her head and said, go in. Lu Ning was so angry that she couldn't help but stepped on his foot hard before walking towards the classroom. Lucien gasped in pain when he stopped. You stinky girl, you are so cruel. Because there were people around, I couldn't bear it and didn't show it. As soon as Lu Ning entered the classroom, she saw Jian Nian blinking her big bowling eyes and looking at her like stars. Third brother actually touched your head just now, how do you spoil me? This feeling of knocking off a real person's CP is simply too high. Luning? What the hell? Jian looked at her with excitement and gossip. Tell me, what did it feel like when the third brother touched your head just now? Luning, I don't feel anything. How is it possible? Jian didn't believe it. You don't have that feeling of panic, palpitations, rapid heartbeat, pounding dear, and pounding heart. End of this chapter.